Hi there. So in this lesson we're going to have a look at editing a beatbox. So basically we're taking our inspiration from beatboxes like Lasse Gertsen's Beatbox Online, but what I'm really looking at here is the technical side of how we capture a little bit of footage and then how we cut those clips down to a short enough length and repeat them and kind of give them a basic rhythm and then start to play with them a little bit more. We're going to be working in a few different applications: Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere Pro and Windows Movie Maker, and that will give us a chance to kind of look at some different editing applications. But what we're mainly concerned with this particular series of lessons is the technical cutting down of the clips so that you can kind of repeat these short rhythmical sections. So I'm going to go ahead and make some beats that I'm going to use in my edit, okay? And I'm not changing the backdrop or anything like that, but this is something you can work on to kind of give your beatbox video a little bit more excitement, a little bit more interest. So I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of sounds. So we're going to have a couple beats. So, okay. And basically I'm going to leave a space before and after those beats so that I can cut them down and then edit them together so they make a sound. Okay, so I'm going to make a couple more. Okay, so we've got a few sounds there now, and now we're going to go ahead and look at how we chop them down in the editing application. Okay, so now if you're using Final Cut Pro 10 or Windows Movie Maker, then you'll want to switch out of this video and go check out the video that's specifically for editing in those pieces of software. Okay, so we've opened up Adobe Premiere Pro, and it doesn't matter whether you're working with Adobe Premiere Pro CC or CS6, the process for what we're going to do here will be pretty much the same. Okay, so the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is make a brand new project. Okay, so we'll call this Beatbox Tutorial. Okay, and we've got some options here for our general settings and our scratch disks. We'll just leave everything as is. The only thing I would suggest is if you're working in Premiere Pro and you want to use some different scratch disks for capturing your video, capturing your audio, that's really worth looking into as you kind of professionalize what you're doing. I am going to change the location of where I'm saving my Premiere Pro project. So I'm going to browse to this location on my hard drive. So I've made a folder for the Beatbox tutorial, and I'm going to drop everything right into there so I know where it is. We don't need to worry about any of these options that we have here. We're not capturing any footage, so we can just dive straight in and create a brand new sequence. Okay, so when you first open up Premiere Pro, this is what you'll see. So we have our source clips on the left-hand side here. We have our project, any files we bring in down on the bottom left-hand side here. And then the important bit here is our program and our timeline, which are kind of interchangeable with one another. So basically anything we edit onto our timeline is going to show up in our program window here, which is our final video. So I'm going to go ahead to the desktop, okay, and to my Beatbox tutorial folder, and I have this movie which I've captured with the different beats that I've imported. So I can drag that straight into my Premiere Pro project. Okay, we can see a few things here, such as the movie, the frame rate, and that type of stuff. Okay, now I'm going to make a new timeline, a new sequence. So I'm going to go to File, New, and Sequence, and that's going to allow me to make a new sequence. So basically, what I want to do, and this is kind of important, is make a sequence that matches the footage that I'm bringing in. Okay, so my footage is, if we just have a little scroll along here, okay, we can see that it's 1920 by 1080. Okay, it's square pixels, so the 1.0 means it's square pixels. And then if we scroll across, that's all we really need to see here. We saw that it was 59.94 frames per second or 60 frames per second. So I'm going to jump to File, New, and Sequence. Okay, and my camera is a AVC HD camera. It's recording to an MPEG-4 because I've changed some of the settings, but the frame rate and the other options are essentially the same as the AVC HD format. So if I go to AVC HD, I'm recording in 1080p. Okay, and so I want to select AVC HD 1080p at 60 frames per second, which is the frames per second here. Okay, and we can see that 60 frames per second here in my video settings is really 59.94. My width and height are good. My pixels are square here, which is perfect. Okay, and really you want to match the properties on your camera. Okay, now having said that, 1080p will require a little bit of render power, so sometimes you might want to drop down to something that's 720p, even though you've recorded in 1080p. And certainly for this task, it doesn't matter whether you're doing it in 1080p, 720p, or for the cutting that we're doing in a standard definition format. So I'm going to click OK there. And now, basically, if I double click on this clip, it's going to open it up and I can preview it in my window here. So I'm just going to turn the volume down a little bit. Okay, and I did a little intro to the tutorial here first. Okay, and then I began to make some sounds towards the end. So we're going to find those sounds. Okay, so basically we want to cut those sounds down. Okay, so I'm using some shortcut keys to do what you can do up here in the play bar, which is to play forwards, step backwards, okay, which are the J, K, and L keys on the keyboard. So if I play backwards, I'm going to find one of the first beats. Okay, so we've got a beat here. I'm going to mark an in point, okay, and then mark an out point once I finish that beat. So now that clip that I have, I can edit down to the timeline. I can do an insert edit, an overwrite edit. I'm just going to do an insert edit, and you can see now my clip is down on the timeline. Okay, so if I play the timeline, I've essentially got that beat down on the timeline. Okay, so if we just grab one more section of footage, okay, let's, I think I moved around a little bit towards the end. Okay, so we'll just grab this sideways beat. Okay, so I'm pressing J to play backwards, marking an in point with I, playing forwards, and you can see those in and out points coming up. Okay, so again, I'm gonna just make sure my playhead is at the end of my clip. Okay, and I can do that by using the up and down arrows on my keyboard to make sure that I'm exactly at the right spot, and then do an insert edit, which is gonna now mean I've got this on the timeline. Okay, and you can see those clips are rather long, so I do need to trim them down a little bit. So I'm going to go down to the timeline now and just trim those down, and then we'll look at how we can loop those. And then once you've got a looping kind of basic beat in Premiere Pro, then what you can do is start to lay over clips over the top. So we can extend out our audio timeline here, and you can see when we do that, by just coming between this line, we actually can then see the audio waveforms. And when we zoom in, so we'll see a little more. So if we come to our scroll bar at the bottom here, I grab one of the handles at the end of that scroll bar, we can now zoom into the timeline, and eventually we'll see those beats. And what we want to do here is really kind of trim them down. So I have the basic selection tool on, okay, and I can trim now my beat down to exactly where it is on the timeline. Okay, so just trimming that right down, and that's the clip that I'm going to use and kind of keep reusing. So if we drag that to the left now, and then I will do the same for this one. Okay, so I'm just pulling that back. Okay, and then now you can see I've got a, okay, and it's a little bit slow, so I can speed it up by kind of shortening these down and putting them close together. But once I've got those two clips on the timeline, I can select them, go to Edit, Copy, or Command or Control and C, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC. And then importantly, you want to make sure that you don't paste right into the middle of one of these clips and cut them off. So I'm using the up and down arrows to make sure I'm right at the end where I want to paste. So I'm going to go to Edit, Paste, and paste a few times. Okay. And so now I've got my beatbox. So okay, so now if I want to kind of speed this up a little more, we've basically got the boom ch, boom ch. We can start to add in some other rhythms. So if we got, okay, so I'm going to go boom ch, and then I'm going to make this into a boom boom ch. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit, or at least the cuts for it a little bit. So if we now zoom in to our timeline just a little bit more, okay, then basically what I want to do is trim this down, okay, and I'm actually going to cut the end, the trail off that clip until I can fit it into this space. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, okay, and then paste it, okay, and then just zoom out a little bit so I can see the whole timeline. So now, okay, so you can see how we start to build up a nice rhythm there. So if we remove this end bit here, I'm just going to zoom in and start to play with that a little more. So if we pull this in just a little more, we can speed up this rhythm, okay? And you've really just got to play with this, with whichever sounds you're making, and basically kind of try and find a rhythm that works for you. So play this through again. Okay, so let's copy that. We're right at the end here, and we'll paste it. Okay, and now we can play it through. Okay, so now I need to actually change that so that it's okay. And I need to put in another sound in here. So basically, so we need boom ch, boom boom ch, boom ch. Okay, so actually we need to copy all those four, okay, to get the rhythm just right. Okay, so okay, and then we can start to build up our basic rhythm. Okay, so that's how to do your beatbox or basic beatbox in Adobe Premiere Pro. Okay, I've also got some claps in there as well. So what I could do is also come up to my clips here and just find where I'm making claps. Okay, so I got a clap to the left here, and if I play backwards, okay, I can mark an in point, mark an out point, and then when I'm bringing this clip down to the timeline, I want to bring it to the layer above here. Okay, so I'm going to change the target here. So if I move this V1 up, then when I do an overwrite edit, it's actually going to write it to the second track up here. And actually I need to do the audio as well, so I don't overwrite this audio on the A1 track here. So I moved these tabs up and down, and then I'm going to do an overwrite, and you can see my audio drops down to that different layer. So I can now pull that in to just the clap. And I'm now going to duplicate this by holding down the Alt key and then dragging that clip to a different point on this layer. Okay, so we can work on the rhythm, work on how that's kind of playing back, but you get the idea of how you can begin to build this up to your 30-second plus video beatbox. Once we've finished our beatbox, then we need to export it. So we can go to File, Export. We can export our media. We want to make sure we choose some specific settings here. So we're going to export out a QuickTime file. I'm going to export out as HD 1080i 29.97. Okay. And the H.264 codec there is important. That's very uploadable to YouTube and those other sites. And in field order here, I'm just going to change this to progressive. It's going to make my export a custom export, and I will leave it at 29.97. I don't need to export out 60 frames per second. And all these options should be fine. So now H.264 is the codec. Okay. And now we can go to export, and it's going to encode and export out that sequence. And that would be the sequence you could then upload to YouTube as your video beatbox. So we can have a look at that now. On a Mac, you can just press the space bar and it'll give you a preview, or you can double click on it on the PC. And here we can see that finished movie. Okay. A couple things you should watch out for on your timeline. Just watch out for any gaps between the clips. And we can do that by accident, so you don't want to end up with any flashes to black, as you saw there. So make sure that you kind of zoom in, and if you want to check your edit points, then just come to the beginning of your sequence and use the down arrow. And if you ever see a black clip on your program up here on the top right, it means that one of those edit points has a little gap after it, and that gap could be, you know, 1 frame, and it would basically mean that you would have some problems working with and exporting your video, because you'd get those black flashes that happen occasionally. So keep an eye out for those, and just let me know if you have any questions about these basic edit techniques in Adobe Premiere Pro, and good luck with the Beatbox.